I tried to teach you 1, 2, 3. Hello, sir.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Joe, how are you?
Good. Good to see you again.
We're all still getting on to Ontario time. I still think I'm on the Hong Kong time. That was the last place we were at. Thank you all for coming today. I thought that I should take the time to meet with you and tell you a bit more about our trip. I have a prepared statement which I'm going to read to you, and then after that we can open it up, and I'd be delighted to take any questions from you. But at the outset, let me just say that I had an opportunity to look at some of the coverage that our trip received, and I know that many of you would have worked hard to provide us with some coverage when we were over there and we were back here, and I just want to thank you for the effort that you put into that. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I'm pleased to be here with my Minister of Economic Development and Trade, Joe Cordiano, and as well to be accompanied by Tony Wong, my parliamentary assistant in my capacity as Minister responsible for research and innovation. Tony was especially helpful in his hometown of Hong Kong, where he is served us very well. I especially want to thank you and the organizations you represent for the tremendous interest you've shown in Ontario's trade mission to China and Hong Kong. I wanted to provide you with a bit of a briefing on our mission, tell you where we want to go from here, and then open it up for a conversation. First of all, let me say we had a very successful trade mission. And for me personally, it was very exciting. It was the first time I'd ever been to China, and there was so much new there, so much activity there. I believe we generated tremendous goodwill and took a major step towards increased trade and investment with one of the world's fastest growing economies. We experienced the power of Beijing, the bright lights of Shanghai. We visited a school in Suzhou, and we felt the warmth of Nanjing, the capital of our sister province, Jiangsu, before completing our mission in Hong Kong. It was the interpreter for, I think it was the governor of Jiangsu, who said there's an expression in China. And the expression is, while Beijing is a political city and Shanghai is a commercial city, Nanjing is a Chinese city. I don't know how widespread that expression was, but that's what he told me. I very much enjoyed it. Chair of the National People's Congress, the Vice Minister of Commerce,
in Ontario. Ladies and gentlemen, there they are, the four Icelanders, quickly.
Strengthen our 20-year friendship accord with the province of Jiangsu. That was one of the real highlights of the trip for me. I met with some of the leading business people, including in Hong Kong, Li Ka-shing, one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, and I discovered a very warm gentleman. He's very, I expected him to be more assertive and aggressive in his style, but he's very warm, very down to earth, very humble man. Our delegation of more than 125 Ontarians met with several of their counterparts. I believe the Chinese were impressed by the warmth of our people and the clout associated with our economy. I impressed upon our hosts that Ontario's GDP at $518 billion is larger than that of Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Jiangsu combined. We stressed three messages. 1, Ontario is open for business. 2, Ontario wants increased two-way investment and trade with China. And 3, Ontario has tremendous goodwill towards the people of China, in part because there are 500,000 Ontarians of Chinese descent, and they are making extremely valuable contributions to our province. We gave the Chinese three main reasons for increasing ties to Ontario: our education system and the highly skilled workforce it produces, our determination when it comes to fostering innovation, and our ability to attract investment, including $4.5 billion in new auto investments in just the last 2 years. We signed 30 agreements covering business, education, healthcare, and municipal cooperation. And we came away with several new leads that we and the businesses and organizations involved will be following up on. Along the way, we exposed ourselves to just a little bit of China's rich history and culture. I visited the Great Wall of China, the Forbidden City, Sun Yat-sen's tomb, as well as Lama Island in Hong Kong. The history of China and its current economic boom is a powerful story. And now the people writing China's story know something more about Ontario's story. Now, the question is, so what do we do going forward? Here's our strategy for moving forward. First, we want Ontario firms to do more business in China, whether through direct foreign investment or exports. So I'm pressing the federal government to sign a reasonable foreign investment protection agreement with the Chinese government. And I plan to write to the Prime Minister urging that Canada not miss out on a good deal because we're holding out for a perfect deal that may not be attainable. Second, we want Chinese firms to invest here in Ontario. As I learned over there from speaking to Chinese officials, China is currently developing its 11th five-year plan. From my discussions, I know that a major component of that will be encouraging Chinese firms to invest outside of China. We want Ontario to be an irresistible destination for those investments. And we think we are uniquely placed to attract them because of our diversity, our workforce, and our access to the North American market. Third, we want to market our expertise in delivering public services in China. The tremendous growth of China is putting a huge strain on public services there. We can help China develop and deliver high-quality public services, especially in the areas of education and healthcare. This can generate revenue in the short term and stronger relationships in the long term, relationships that will pay major dividends down the road. Fourth, and lastly, we want to make Ontario an approved destination for Chinese tourism. We need the federal government to secure approved destination status for Canada in China. Increased tourist traffic will generate great economic activity here at home. I also want you to know that we are developing a group within government that will be working on how we can best deliver on these four priorities. I want to conclude by telling you that everywhere we went, it was clear that China is open to Canada in general and Ontario in particular. There is tremendous goodwill. The door is open. To seize the almost limitless opportunities in China, we just need to march through that door. And our trade mission was a major step forward. Thank you. I'll open up for questions now.
You mentioned about you want to see Ontario to be an approved destination for Chinese tourism. Can you say more about that?
The central government has a list, and it's a list of approved destinations, and we need to get onto that list. And that's, I think, what that list does is it lends some guidance and some comfort to Chinese citizens who are in a position to be able to travel abroad. And let me tell you just something that I found to be very effective. When I met with all the officials, and we met with many, I always told them two things in particular. Beyond economic statistics and our desire to do more trade, I told them two stories. One, I told you before about 3 young students who moved into my home in 1973. You may recall that story. And that indicated a personal connection with China that went beyond our political and economic interest. But it also spoke to our country's long-standing relationship with China. In 1970, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, then Prime Minister, established diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China. Sometimes we forget in 2005, that was quite controversial at the time. Not very many countries were extending a hand of friendship to China. And Canada did that in 1970. In 1973, my family took 3 students into our home. So I told them that story. And the other thing that I told them is that we have 500,000 Chinese Ontarians of Chinese descent here in Ontario. I told them that we are shortly going to be regulating our government, traditional Chinese medicine here in Ontario, as an indication of the value we attach to that science, which has been around for thousands of years. And we see it as being something that is complementary to traditional Western medicine. I told them that we had Chinese characters in some of our street signs. I was doing whatever I could to indicate that this is a warm, receptive environment. You don't have, if you want to come to Ontario, and you're going to feel very much at home here. We've had this relationship since 1970. You have a premier who welcomed students into his home some 32 years ago. We've got a government that's about to regulate traditional Chinese medicine. We have a population with 500,000 Ontarians of Chinese descent. This is a home for you right here. And I found in all cases, well, poor Joe and Tony had to listen to these stories over and over again as I told them, but the leadership was very receptive to those stories.
Premier, can you speak a little bit Chinese now?
Ni hao ma. I got away with ni hao ma, hen hao, which works for everything. And what else would I have? Xie, of course. Gumbe. I found lots of toasting. I discovered there. But I discovered that the Chinese leadership has a very good sense of humor, and they like stories about our province and some of the things that we have done here. I found them very warm. I found the Chinese leadership very thoughtful. While they have huge opportunities and they have powerful economic growth, they also have some very real challenges. But I remember when I was having lunch with the Vice Mayor of Suzhou, and Terry and I went to visit a wonderful school there. Number 10 middle school, I think they call it.
Number 10.
Yeah. And we met with a group of students there, grade 9 students who were being schooled in English as part of the curriculum. Having a good chance to chat with them. But as I chatted with them, none of them had a brother or a sister. So I thought this is going to be an interesting, as a result of the one-child policy in China. There's something that's never happened before in history, and I'm wondering whether this draws them together and makes for stronger ties and friendships in the classroom, since they don't have a brother or a sister at home. But those kids are just like kids everywhere. When I asked them about their hopes and their dreams and what they wanted to be when they grew up, there was a young girl who said she wanted to be a policewoman, but she felt she had to get more muscle, she said, before she could go into policing. Somebody wanted to be a teacher, somebody wanted to be a businessman, somebody wanted to be a writer. Same kinds of things that I've discovered elsewhere. Where was I going with that? What was I talking about? What was your question?
I just wanted to ask you if you speak some Chinese.
Oh yeah, you got all the Chinese out of me. But I know the Vice Mayor. I said to him, if I went and knocked on 100 doors here in your community, what would the top concerns be for the people living in your community? He said the top concern would be the environment. Pretty well every official with whom I met in China raised the environment as a real issue. Air quality in particular. And that raises some opportunities for us here in Ontario. China's having some huge challenges. We are at the cutting edge in the world in eliminating coal-fired generation. And I know that we could be helpful in terms of helping them to build renewable forms of energy, whether we're talking about wind power, solar, hydroelectric, more efficient gas furnaces, and even helping them with until they can make the transition. Cleaner forms of coal-fired generation.
Water treatment as well.
Water treatment was another huge issue. Yeah, we signed an agreement there.
Premier, could you tell us about what kind of long-term agreement that Planetary Group Inc. signed with the Shanghai Auto Company?
Do you know anything more about that, Joe?
Van Adder you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The automotive parts company?
Yes, that's right.
They're making an investment there in terms of putting some of their technology, their equipment in production there. And they're starting off with that approach initially, and then looking at how they might develop that further for further investment on their part. So they're starting off with the equipment that's going into the production facility there, and monitoring that, and then looking to produce more auto production there, more parts.
So it's basically like supplying equipment for Chinese auto companies?
Specialized equipment that Van Adder has in a joint agreement. It's a joint venture with the Chinese company. For now, this is the first step, and then they're going to be looking at creating a production capability there with this group.
Here's something else that you might be interested in. China is, sooner rather than later, going to produce their own car. They're putting, I heard in Beijing alone, they're putting 1,000 new cars on the road every day. China is going to start producing its own car. And one of the meetings that Minister Coriano and I had was with some of the auto sector people there. And when they start to produce their own car, they're going to be, I'm asking them to consider making a model here in Ontario. All right, we've got some of the traditional North American manufacturers here, the OEMs. We've got Toyota in here. We'd be honored to have Chinese production taking place here in Ontario as well. But they just as sure as night follows day, they're going to start producing their own car. Convinced of that, based on the meetings that we had there.
Is there any change before your trip and then after the trip to the impression and other things?
Well, first of all, there's no substitute for being physically present there and understanding how dramatic the change is. There are cranes everywhere. China is grappling with the biggest migration in the history of humanity, with people, 800 million people still living in the countryside, moving into the urban centers. The single biggest economic issue I believe leadership is grappling with is the disparity in terms of incomes earned in the cities and incomes earned on the farm. And as people leave farms and come to the cities, there's a housing problem, there's a transportation problem, there are job problems, and that. The Chinese are extremely entrepreneurial, very industrious, very productive. But here's a little story for you, which I thought was kind of telling. When I went to Tsinghua University in Beijing, and I spoke there about human rights issues, before I spoke to the students, I met with the faculty. And Tsinghua is a fabulous university, beautiful campus, cutting-edge research taking place there. And I said, if there was a very intelligent child growing up in remote China today, what is the chance in a very poor area, what is the chance that child will make it to university? Because we all know that China, that magnificent country, will never achieve her greatest potential until the Chinese people achieve their greatest potential. So my question was, will an intelligent young boy or young girl make it to university? And the answer was, not likely. We have a very strong brand here in Ontario when it comes to education. You know about our investment, $6.2 billion more into post-secondary education. We need to find a way to work with China. We need to find a way to ensure that every child, and no matter how far away that community is, no matter how poor that is, no matter how remote it is, can attend a good public school. China is working hard to ensure that all children continue in school for at least 9 years. We're saying that, so that would take you up to, I guess, grade 9. We're working hard in Ontario to pass a new law that says you've got to continue until 18. But that's where I'd like to see China go. I'd like to see us to be able to assist it in improving the quality of its public education for all children, because that'll make China truly strong economically. Yes, sir.
I think you mentioned that during your trip you want to attract the Chinese investor in Ontario and also in Canada. Do you have any potential investors? If they are, what kind of industry area they are interested in?
Well, I'll let the minister speak to this. I think we have some real potential on the auto sector front because of our perceived strengths here. I had, for example, there is in Jiangsu in Nanjing, I met the largest producer, certainly in Jiangsu, of TCM Pharmaceuticals. And he, as a result of the information that I supplied that says we're going to be regulating TCM in Ontario, was looking for new opportunities. And I said, well, listen, come to Ontario. When you come to Ontario, you don't just get 12.5 million people. You get access to 435 million people in the North American Free Trade Zone. So come here.
Let me just add to that. I met with Beijing Capital Corporation, and they are looking to make some investments in Ontario in a number of ways. Some infrastructure, perhaps in some of the industries in Ontario. And in addition to that, we met many ICT companies. NTE was present at one of the lunches that was held by the ambassador, and various other, a pharmaceutical company we met is interested in coming to Ontario and making an investment here, and they're seriously looking at an investment here. So these were key sectors for us: life sciences, ICT, the auto sector, and we had positive responses from all those sectors.
The other one that I thought was very helpful was our meeting with Li Ka-shing. He's got a warm place in his heart for Canada. That was obvious from the moment that we first began to chat. I hoped I would get a meeting with Mr. Li. And then I'd hope maybe I'd get a half hour. He gave us 1 hour. He was 1 hour in a beautiful, the best view I had from Hong Kong was from his office. A spectacular view overlooking the harbor. And for those who have not followed Hong Kong, and I'm sure you have, we all remember a day when things were made in Hong Kong. I'm not sure if anything is made in Hong Kong anymore. That's all been sent to mainland China. They're into services now, financial services in particular. But anyway, our meeting with Mr. Li was very productive. And I encouraged him to come here and to help us build our infrastructure. We've got a $30 billion infrastructure plan over the course of the next 5 years. We have to build roads, we have to build hospitals, we have to build bridges, border crossings. He was interested in ethanol production as well. What else?
Yeah, some alternative energies.
Alternative energies, energy production. I told him there are all opportunities here. You know, the fact that he's the only other charitable foundation that is outside of China, he's in Canada, I think is pretty telling. He's got a place in his heart here for Canada.
Follow-up questions?
Yeah.
Basically, I know that there's about 3,000 TV stations in China, and then some of them they want to get a license in Canada. But we found that it seems that the TV licensing is a protection industry. So will the government or is Canada or Ontario open for business? Or there's just too many protections right now?
That really is a federal issue that the federal government will oversee in terms of applications for licenses. You know, so that would be something that I would refer to them.
Yeah, I have a question. British Columbia has built a Chinese language website to promote their tourism sources to China. I wanted to know if Ontario government have a same or any plan to promote their services or their products to China as the same purpose?
Whatever British Columbia is doing, we're going to do even better. I can tell you that right now. I'm interested in learning about this. I was not aware of this, but that seems to me like makes perfect sense. Like it's a no-brainer. we have to be able to demonstrate to the people of China that they can come here, that they'll be respected, that they will be welcomed, and that they will feel very much at home here. And then we've got to extend hospitality. And we've got to not only prepare China for visiting here, we've got to prepare Ontario, whether it's a website, making sure that our hoteliers, people in the tourism sector, understand what it is that the Chinese tourist is going to be looking for, and to make sure we're providing those services.
Okay, Mr. Premier, if I may add, especially in Hong Kong, we were told by the Consul General that there are 250,000 Canadian residents in Hong Kong, most of them from Ontario.
Yeah.
And of course, the president of Hong Kong University is a former scientist from SickKids. So he's another, one of our best ambassadors from Ontario. So we have a lot of good people representing us in Hong Kong right now.
We have time for one more question.
Okay, so Premier, you encourage the business people to do the business and the investment are in China. Then have you worried about those business people move their companies or manufacturers to China and create more job loss in Ontario?
No, I'm not concerned about that. What we're talking about two-way investment and two-way trade here. One of the unusual requests that I made of China was that I said, I want you to invest here. You're just beginning to conclude your 11th five-year plan. As you encourage Chinese companies to invest elsewhere, look at Ontario. Most of the politicians and the leaders who visit China are there to lobby on behalf of their business communities so that they can invest in China. I am convinced that ultimately our economic growth is to be found in free trade and in expanding our ties and investments elsewhere. By the way, that has the benefit also of promoting understanding. Some of the concerns that were raised about this trip at the outset were, what about human rights issues? How could you be dealing with a country where there are perceived human rights issues? And I want to come back to something I said earlier. In 1970, Pierre Elliott Trudeau established diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China. He's the very same man that brought us the Charter of Rights. He understood the single best way to influence a nation in a positive sense is through constructive dialogue and through constructive engagement, and by establishing ever stronger trade linkages. So I am convinced that we can compete with the best of the world, and that we can win. And I've got, we all have children, and we're proud of our children, and they're all proud Canadians, but they're growing up as citizens of the world. My daughter's very first job, which she begins in January, is in Sri Lanka. So am I supposed to tell my daughter that no, you cannot go anywhere, you've got to stay and work in Canada? No. All right, because it's going to all work itself out in the end. So I'm convinced that whether it's on a personal front or on an economic front, the more we trade with each other and the more we understand each other, the better that is for all of us.
Thank you. Can I have one more question?
There were more than 30 agreements signed. Is there any Olympic-related agreement?
I think that there was one company that was engaged in water purification contractual arrangement with associated to the Beijing Olympics. I believe it was Xenon Environmental. I'll check that for you if you'd like. One of the companies was dealing with selling their technology for the Olympics.
But it will be a big event in Beijing, so will you be disappointed when not possible agreement related to?
I would be very surprised if we did not have Ontario businesses that are somehow involved in the economic opportunities connected with the Olympics in Beijing or the World's Fair in Shanghai. I can tell you that, for example, in Shanghai, well, here's a lesson I learned about China. Skyscrapers can actually be works of art. There are some wonderful artistic merit attached to tall buildings in China in a way that I have never seen here in North America. And a lot of those buildings in Shanghai were designed by architects from Ontario. So I would be very surprised if there were not economic opportunities there that were seized by Ontario businesses. When it comes
just to add to what the Premier said, that the Beijing Olympics, the folks did request a meeting with the Premier, but his schedule was impossible. I met with Vice Mayor Liu in Beijing, who was in charge of the Olympics, so the door is open.
當年今次嚟中國之行咧，最大收穫係乜嘢？
我覺得最大收穫咧係有3樣嘢。第一方面咧就係話喺投資方面，因為其實以往咧一向都係話即係加拿大安省咧投資喺中國嘅多，但其實近年來咧大家都知道咧，中國好多企業咧喺經濟上都相當之強大嘅，咁佢哋亦都係喺度揾緊即係去外國投資，尤其是北美洲投資嘅機會。嗱，咁我哋都知道有1、2次佢嘅投資有啲唔係好成功啦。咁但係今次咧就省長去同中國中央嘅官員同埋江蘇省嘅官員咧，嗱江蘇省係我哋姊妹省啊，所以我哋特別重視嘅，亦都好明確咁話，我哋咧好鼓勵雙方投資，我哋鼓勵安省嘅企業去中國投資，亦都鼓勵中國嘅企業嚟安省投資。咁所以投資啊，即係呢度咧尤其是喺同省長同中央嘅商業部咧，係馬秀紅部長講嘢嘅時候咧，咁佢哋談話就話，即係部長就話我哋而家正在做緊第11個5年計劃嘅。咁呢個計劃裏邊咧，其中一個重點就希望中國嘅企業咧去外國投資。咁佢話：咁我哋一定會優先考慮加拿大，唔淨止因為加拿大係一個好朋友，而且咧亦都因為咧加拿大咧嘅高科技好卓越。同埋有好多咧係華裔嘅移民能夠做我哋嘅商業大使嘅，咁而安省係加拿大最強一個省，咁當然亦都係佢哋優先考慮嘅省份嘅。嗱，第二方面咧就係話喺教育培訓嗰度啊，即係其實我哋一路都深信咧，即係中國係一個好龐大嘅市場，而需要咧即係加拿大能夠提供好多教育培訓嘅，除咗話正規嘅即係大學啊，或者係好多國際學校之外咧。仲有就係話，好似北京同上海咧，都會主辦好大型嘅國際項目，即係2008年嘅奧運同埋2010年嘅世界博覽會啦。其實佢都已經派個團嚟安省，亦都睇過，即係我哋點樣去主辦呢啲大型嘅項目咧咁。而成個中國經濟都會俾呢兩個即係國際性嘅項目咧帶動咗上嚟。咁所以唔係淨係話即係係管理呢個項目嘅人員。亦話無論語文，全國都學緊英文嘅嚟而家，即係同埋咧係話即係酒店管理，因為佢要做即係個接受全世界嘅賓客嘅主人，咁佢酒店管理都要合乎國際水平㗎，所以話各行各業咧都要提高佢嘅服務水平。咁呢方面加拿大咧係好大商機嘅。嗱，第3方面咧就係話即係喺個商業，尤其是創新方面。咁我哋知道咧，中國有好多非常之高水平嘅科技園，好似我今次都再去翻即係北京嘅中關村啦，同埋咧上海嘅張江科技園啦。咁佢哋都係咧喺重點，除咗 ICT 之外咧，仲重點咧係做緊即係 biotech， 即係話生化科技啊，同埋生命科學呢一類嘅。咁我覺得即係安省亦都喺呢個新嘅研創廳，即係省長自己做廳長呢個新嘅廳啦。咁我做佢助理啊。咁亦都係重點。放喺即係個生化科學同埋生命嘅科技方面，咁我哋即係簽咗好多協議，其中有幾樣好重要咧，就好似譬如話係滑鐵盧大學同南京大學，嗱南大即係全國10大之一啦，簽咗一個咧係學生即係交流嘅，希望能夠咧即係兩校嘅學生咧攞到2面嘅學位，同埋咧就係話即係喺上海度咧，我哋嘅即係大學醫療網絡咧。亦都同上海一個即係生命科技研究中心咧一齊去研究點樣去即係治療癌症。咁而去到香港，嗱香港大學就係我哋以前安省嘅居民徐立之教授做校長啦。咁佢香港大學嘅醫學院咧，亦都同 多倫多嘅西奈山醫院咧簽咗一個醫療研究嘅即係協議嘅。咁呢啲安排其實唔係淨係話即係研究咁簡單嘅。表面上睇好似冇錢嘅數字，但係咧其實當我哋進行呢啲研究嘅時候咧，就會有好多其他機會咧去配合，尤其是即係呢個生化科學同埋咧即係生命即係科技嘅企業咧，會有無限咁多商機嘅。
我知道啦，譬如話中國或者即係佢哋有好多保護主義啦。咁其實喺加拿大即係 open for business 呢樣嚟講咧，會唔會有啲行業譬如係唔歡迎中國嚟嘅？譬如話以往中國想買礦砂啊，或者譬如話想喺加拿大設立電視台咁，似乎都好多即係掣肘咁。其實我想政府有冇咩幫助咧？
嗱，我諗有一部分就係即係聯邦嘅管轄，咁我哋咧都只能夠咧盡量去即係代呢啲企業去爭取，因為安省就管唔到啦。咁但係另一方面咧，亦都係由安省嘅權力範圍之內嘅。咁省長咧亦都同馬松部長咧講話，其實我哋翻去咧好有可能咧就會設立呢個跨部門嘅小組。咁正話省長咧都提過呢樣嘢㗎啦，即係呢個就係政府內部嘅小組咧，希望盡量去便利同埋鼓勵即係外國嘅企業，特別係中國企業咧嚟到安省投資咧，令到佢哋能夠比較暢順無阻嘅。咁當然唔係話100%會成功，但係最少咧，我哋政府都會有呢個即係既定嘅策略，就係話如果有乜嘢問題，因為呢個係跨部門嘅小組啊嘛，咁我哋咧最少喺即係省裏邊都能夠咧協助佢哋，同埋咧係即係幫助佢哋咧向聯邦政府爭取，如果嗰個係聯邦法例咧，會影響到佢哋投資嘅即係個方向。
啲人都提到啦，你喺呢個 trip 入邊提過話，希望安省成為即係中國嘅法定旅遊區啊！呢方面有冇進展？又或者幾時有機會成功咧？其實
嗱，呢方面咧就亦都大家明白係加拿大嘅聯邦政府同中國嘅中央政府簽㗎呢個協議。咁我哋翻嚟咧就會盡量咧向聯邦政府爭取話要盡快簽呢個協議。咁而我哋都唔明白點解等咗咁耐嘅，因為由1月份由馬田總理即係訪華咧已經講呢樣嘢。咁而究竟係因為中方嘅問題咧，定係加拿大嘅問題咧，我都搞唔清楚而家。但係我哋覺得話，即係當我哋喺呢度爭取，即係希望聯邦能夠盡快即係簽妥，亦都咧向中國嘅中央官員反映咗，話希望你哋亦都向即係有關當局表達，話其實安省咧係一個好高嘅意願啊，希望盡快簽到嘅。咁我亦都希望咧，即係未來呢幾月咧能夠簽好啦。咁另外一個協議咧就係其實加拿大聯邦政府同埋中國嘅中央都係商量緊呢一個係話外國投資者嘅保護法例嘅。咁馬秀雄部長同我哋講話，其實中國咧同超過120個國家簽咗呢一類嘅保障法例㗎啦。咁我亦都明白咧，就係話即係聯邦政府，即係加拿大嘅聯邦政府咧，係希望同中國當局咧爭取到更高層次嘅保護。咁但係馬部長就話呢個係有一定困難。佢因為當佢同120個國家簽個模式都一樣，而你要即係提高個保護嘅水平咧，咁就佢哋覺得好難做啦。因為咁其餘嗰120個係咪都要提高咧？咁所以佢同我哋講嘅時候就話，希望我哋聯邦政府咧盡快同佢哋咧即係以既定嘅模式去簽呢個合約。嗱，咁呢個唔係安省嘅權範，但我亦都會向聯邦政府去表達呢樣嘢。
安省對中國嘅貿易係入超定出超嚟啫？
嗱，到而家為止咧，即係安省對中國嘅貿易咧，都仲係有赤字嘅。根據我了解咧，係超過即係100億嘅赤字嘅而家。即係入超嘅。係啦，咁所以，但係我哋希望話，無論喺經貿方面或者投資方面啊，咁因為投資我哋希望係雙向啦，即係唔好淨係我哋單方面去投資。咁希望未來呢幾年內咧，係能夠扭轉呢個劣勢。咁呢幾年係一個好重要嘅即係經貿嘅窗口嘅。因為第一，正係要講咗啦，中國將會係開始推進佢個第11個5年經濟計劃。第二方面咧就係話，未來呢幾年，因為奧運同埋世博會咧，所帶動全國即係嘅經濟啊嘅振奮同埋發展咧。咁如果我哋呢幾年喺呢個即係經貿嘅窗口唔能夠有突破咧，過去嗰幾年就會更加困難。所以我覺得今次我哋雖然咧，省長帶一個即係有史以來最龐大嘅訪問團去出訪，得到好豐盛嘅成果， 即係但係咧，佢開咗好多門咧，呢啲門咧要我哋未來呢6個月到12個月咧去落實同埋跟進咧，先能夠即係簽到唔淨止30幾合約，希望係300幾或者3000幾合約，咁先能夠將豐盛嘅成果咧帶翻嚟安省嘅。
大家知道啦，響加拿大有好多中國移民或者香港移民啦，咁佢哋即係呢種譬如華裔加拿大人，對於譬如加中貿易有冇咩即係具體嘅幫助咧？
嗱，其實即係咁多即係華裔嘅移民咧，尤其是即係喺中國嚟嘅移民，而係有營商嘅經驗嘅，咁佢哋係對我哋推進即係安省同埋中國嘅貿易係會係一個好重要嘅作用嘅。省中其實一路都話，佢話我哋有3個即係優點。點解即係我哋覺得我哋即係有呢個咁強嘅客觀條件同中國做生意呢？佢第一就因為我哋人力資源，我哋呢即係安省啊個即係勞動人口啊有57%係有專上教育嘅水平嘅。佢第二就因為呢我哋有強大嘅經濟，即係我哋全加拿大最強嘅經濟，我哋嘅 GDP 係多過北京、上海、廣州同全江蘇省呢4地方加埋嘅 GDP， 所以佢話就因為我哋有咁強大經濟咧，所以先吸引到譬如話美國嘅通用車行啊、嘅福特車行啊，同埋即係豐田日本嘅豐田嚟我哋度投資。咁第3個重要嘅地方就係我哋咧係有好多華裔嘅居民，而呢啲華裔嘅居民咧，亦都好多係有營商經驗，對中國嘅商業文化有好深厚嘅認識，所以我係好鼓勵啊！佢哋喺未來呢幾個月係盡量咧去配合安省嘅方向去攻打呢個市場。但我希望咧大家咧就唔好太貪心，即係唔好漁翁撒網咁再話啊！即係中國咁大嘅市場，我樣都做，其實唔得嘅。中國市場咧雖然係好大，雖然咧即係表面上睇咧係即係話好容易做到好大嘅成果，但係我哋一定要專注，即係無論喺科技上面或者喺教育培養嗰度咧，都要將自己最好嘅產品或者最好嘅服務或者最好嘅培訓計劃，然後將佢配合中國嘅需要，再作一個咧係重點有策略性嘅即係計劃咧，先能夠可以成功。咁我覺得我哋可能以前咧就即係因為冇一個好重點啊嘅做法，而其實未來咧即係呢幾個月咧都有好多即係唔同嘅團體同我講話，即係譬如話係礦業嘅團體啊，或者係旅遊嘅團體，或者係生命科學嘅團體，或者係工程嘅團體咧，咁佢哋係喺佢哋個行業度做一個即係重點同埋專注嘅推廣，我覺得咁先得到個成功嘅效果先大嘅。
最後，安省政府喺譬如中國嘅城市入邊有冇啲代表辦事處或者係商務辦事處？
嗱，其實即係安省政府咧喺上海已經有好幾年即係設立咗呢個代表處㗎啦。咁而咧，我哋亦都知道咧，即係短期之內好有可能咧會喺東京亦都設立一個代表處。嗱，咁未來會唔會再增加代表處咧？咁呢個即係要省長同埋即係經貿廳嘅廳長決定啦。咁但係我覺得其實即係呢個唔係淨係有冇幾個代表處啊，我諗，而係話即係你有代表處就令到我哋有一個橋頭堡，即係當我哋嘅企業入到去咧係有呢個支持。但係就算即係加拿大嘅領事館同埋北京嘅大使館咧，都相當之支持我哋嘅。好似今次我哋出訪，無論去到北京佢大使啦，同埋即係上海同埋香港嘅當地領事館咧，佢都有商務專員嘅，都會對我哋有好強烈嘅支持，同埋咧係即係有好全面性嘅服務。但係我覺得反而最重要咧，就係話即係我哋嘅企業要有呢一個務實，但係又願意即係有少少承擔風險嘅精神。咁所以就點我正話話，即係佢哋一定要專注，咁然後令到你嗰個風險減低。但係做生意永遠有風險嘅。咁我覺得今次省長去咗，得到當地政界同埋商界嘅支持，開咗呢啲門，你哋再去，然後再經過其他每一個廳嘅支持同埋商業嘅合作咧，咁你風險已經減到最低。如果而家唔去咧，就可能真係未來呢幾十年都好後悔㗎啦。唔該你。
大家好，今日係2005年11月21日。今日我就響安省嘅 Queen's Park，就係省議會大樓入邊。 咁嚟呢個目的咧就係話今日有一個記者招待會，就係安省省長帶同咗一個125人嘅貿易代表團，就去咗中國做咗一個即係巡迴訪問。咁翻嚟咧做咗一個報告會，即係記者會咧就係介紹咗呢個即係呢個貿易代表團嗰個成果同埋所見所聞。咁我哋咧早高亦都訪問咗即係黃志華議員，咁佢同我簡單介紹一下佢今次嘅即係行程。
雖然咧僅僅嘅12日，咁由省長領導下，由我哋黃志華省議員領導下嘅一個訪問團呢，總嘅嚟講係算非常成功嘅。咁以我哋國際集團為例呢，我哋深深感受到嗰種呢個兩個政府嘅高層嘅接觸咁我哋咧係得益不少嘅。咁包括有呢有啲比如話係地鐵嘅項目啦，同埋地鐵上蓋啦等等嘅建築嗰方面呢，都有眉目係傾緊嘅。同埋呢，我哋國際集團呢亦喺上海呢正式呢成立咗國際地產中國有限公司啦。咁我哋呢亦係同上海嘅東湖集團呢有一個協議喺佢哋嗰度呢共同呢係開展移民啦，同埋呢個地產嘅銷售嘅服務幫助啲中國嘅新嘅移民呢到呢個加拿大嚟到定居同埋發展事業嘅，特別係地產方面嚟講，佢哋要喺呢度呢安居樂業等等嘅事呢，我哋都希望能夠今後提供更佳嘅服務嘅。
有冇咩具體嘅 contract 你簽咗喺度？
我哋就係簽咗呢，就同東湖集團呢大家合作嘅一個協議即係呢個協議呢，就喺佢哋個 office 嗰度呢，就開展我哋國際地產喺中國嘅業務啦。
咁你哋嗰個錦繡中華嚟講，有冇吸引到中國嘅投資者興趣？
對於錦繡中華個 project 呢，佢哋都大感興趣。咁覺得啦，我哋嘅嗰個概念呢，同埋個發展呢，係值得讚揚嘅。咁佢哋呢有好多發展商都覺得呢，將呢個概念呢，甚至去到中國去做去擴建特別係國際美食街呢個概念嚟講呢，係非常之好嘅。所以呢，我哋有可能嘅話呢，喺中國各大城市咧都有國際美食街。錦繡中華嘅項目呢，喺加拿大呢，佢哋都有啲發展商咧都感覺有咁嘅興趣嚟投資。
國際集團未來嘅方向會唔會係中國係一個發展嘅重點國家嘅城市咧？
當然啦，家中已經提升到係策略性嘅合作伙伴啦。咁所以呢，我哋地產方面呢，亦係喺策略嘅合作伙伴嚟嘅。已經同東湖集團嚟講呢，就達成協議，我哋喺上海將會有國際地產中國有限公司嘅服務㗎啦，已經有 office 啦。咁為咗要進一步呢令到啲新嘅移民呢能夠有兩個地方落腳嘅話呢，我哋喺加拿大方面呢，亦相繼咁呢，喺溫哥華呢亦有 office 喺 Richmond。仲有一個相當令人興奮嘅呢，就係因為美加對啲軟木嘅輸出到美國係有爭執，咁我就揾到一條出路呢，就係喺 BC 省嘅Builder Alpha Beta Development 呢，就喺嗰邊呢，佢有好多啲 townhouse 嗰啲condo 賣嘅。咁佢哋呢覺得呢係相當有前途去發展，咁所以呢，佢決定呢就將 BC 省嘅軟木呢就輸出去中國，特別上海同埋北京 去起加拿大屋我哋嘅嗰啲加拿大款嘅屋啦。
你譬如本身嘉鴻集團啦，喺今次嗰個旅程入邊咧，有冇咩即係商業進展咁啊？
今次我哋集團嚟講咧，就旗下嘅嘉美旅遊咧，我哋同中國北京海峽旅行社咧簽咗個意向書。咁呢個意向書就係話咧，我哋係為咗ADS 即係旅遊目的地嗰個開放，咁做準備功夫。咁我哋希望咧就一開放嘅時候咧，咁我哋同海峽旅行社咧喺北京同埋佢全國嘅分社咧，能夠係組織起嚟咧，就係為咗雙方面中間嘅旅遊咧係鋪路嘅。咁我哋就會喺兩地嘅旅遊方面同埋其他旅遊團方面咧，就係合作同埋咧就係擴展嘅商機嘅。
你估呢個協議簽咗之後，嗰個即係譬如話嚟加拿大旅遊嘅中國嗰個旅客會有幾大嘅增長？其實
根據喺加拿大旅遊局嘅負責人高平同我講，就話佢嘅估計咧應該有25%嘅增長，意思即係話咧每年嘅增長嘅比例咧應該係超過25%以上嘅。
今次譬如話你哋呢個即係協議咁啦，係通過即係省府嘅安排，定係你哋即個人或者你自己公司本身嘅一個關係網嘅咧？
今次嚟講，今次我哋參加呢個係團咧，係主要係省長係佢哋辦事處打俾我，咁佢哋好希望我哋集團能夠參加，咁我哋應呢個省長辦公室嘅要求，咁我哋參加到旅行團。
咁其實你覺得即係話省長喺佢哋嘅記者招待會講咧，就好強調即係中加貿易啦，或者係安省同中國貿易嗰度啦。咁你覺得省府有咩即係角色可以扮演咧？其實
咁省府角色扮演就係話可以加強多啲資訊方面，同埋咧舉辦多啲類似咁嘅旅行團或者係考察團應該咁講。咁我哋俾多啲機會，我哋係去中國去實地去了解中國而家個商機同埋咧嗰啲企業嘅情況。咁另外方面咧，我省政府可以邀請係喺中國各地唔同嘅企業或者一啲商業界人士嚟過嚟訪問。咁又喺呢邊辦多啲研討會啊，或者有啲講座或者展覽會，咁咪溝通方面能夠增加兩地嗰個聯繫。
其實譬如話喺中國方面嚟嘅旅客，而家嘅情況下啦，佢哋簽證有冇咩困難咧？
而家簽證都有困難，因為點講咧，就係喺領事館方面咧，即係喺北京或者香港嘅領事館或者大使館方面咧，佢哋都係有限制，所以而家好多時候咧，有啲人想嚟到純粹旅遊。唔係考察，又唔係探親，咁就因為佢哋冇邀請函或者冇一個正當理由，好多時都被拒。咁所以我預計，如果真係開放旅遊嘅時候咧，咁中國嘅公民咧就係可以更加自由地隨時可以過嚟。咁對於呢邊嘅經濟啊，無論係旅遊業啊、酒店業啊、餐館業啊，同埋零售業都係好大嘅幫助嘅。
中加貿易嗰度咧有冇即係譬如話有冇咩具體嘅障礙咧？譬如話語言啊或者關係障礙咧？
咁中加貿易方面，我諗就即係基本上嚟講個發展都幾好，因為胡錦濤主席喺今年9月嚟個訪問，咁佢將加拿大定位成一個戰略性嘅伙伴。咁但係問題嚟講，當然都會有啲政治嘅障礙啦，因為你知道啦，即係兩個政府方面可能話其他方面政治議題咁樣。咁當然我希望呢啲唔係一個大嘅障礙啦。
咁譬如你哋本身集團嚟講，將即係未來幾年嚟響中國方面嘅投資或者個業務方面嗰個取向點樣咧？我
哋會增加呢個力度嘅，咁我哋都會係加強。咁樣而家我哋喺中國都係增聘嘅人手啦，為咗嗰個旅遊方面同埋其他我哋業務方面係做咗個預備功夫啦。咁喺加拿大方面咧，我哋都係喺無論人力資源方面啊，同埋設備方面咧，我哋都係開始咧做一個預備嘅功夫嘅。
OK，好唔該晒。
唔係。